Margaret Ellis had always been the quiet backbone of her family. From her earliest years, she carried herself with a sense of responsibility that far exceeded her age. Born in a modest home on the outskirts of a small town, she grew up understanding that life demanded hard work, sacrifice, and above all, love for those around her. Her father had left when she was barely 10, leaving her mother to juggle 2 jobs, a household, and 3 children. Margaret, though only a child herself, instinctively stepped into the role of caregiver, not just for her siblings, but for her mother, too. She cooked meals, washed clothes, helped with homework, and offered comfort when the nights grew long and uncertain. By the time she reached adulthood, Margaret had become almost invisible in her own story. She pursued her own dreams quietly, never letting ambition overshadow the needs of those she loved. Her first job was as a nurse's aide in a small clinic, where she found a strange sense of fulfillment in caring for strangers. Every patient who walked in carried their fears, pains, and sorrows, yet she treated them all with the same unwavering kindness she reserved for her own family. Her colleagues often admired her dedication, but Margaret never sought recognition. To her, love was not something to display publicly. It was a quiet, relentless force, visible only through actions. When Margaret married at the age of 24, she brought into her new family the same devotion she had learned to practice in her own. Her husband, Thomas, was a gentle man with big dreams but little patience for the practical demands of life. Margaret became the glue that held their household together. She managed finances, comforted children, and balanced her professional life with her personal duties in a way that seemed almost superhuman. Every day, she rose before dawn, prepared breakfast, organized the children's school needs, and then rushed to her job, only to return home and repeat the process, until exhaustion threatened to claim her. Yet, she never complained. Over the years, Margaret raised 3 children who, on the surface, seemed happy and accomplished. Her eldest, Jonathan, became a successful lawyer, moving across the country to build a life he often described as everything Margaret worked for. Her middle child, Emily, pursued her passion for art, traveling and meeting people Margaret had never imagined. And her youngest, Daniel, entered the business world, ambitious and competitive. To anyone looking from the outside, Margaret's life was a triumph of love and devotion. She had given them everything, often at the cost of her own desires, hobbies, and even friendships. But what no one saw was the quiet erosion of Margaret's own world. Her husband, over time, grew distant, absorbed in his career and social life. Friends she once held dear drifted away, replaced by the constant demands of family and work. Invitations to gatherings were politely declined, not out of disinterest, but out of sheer exhaustion and a sense of obligation that outweighed personal joy. Her children, caught up in their own lives, often forgot to call or visit, assuming she would always be there, waiting silently. Margaret never spoke up. She believed love meant sacrifice, and sacrifice meant putting oneself last. As the years passed, her health began to wane. The aches of a lifetime of labor, both physical and emotional, became more pronounced. Margaret found herself sitting in her favorite chair by the window, watching the world move on without her. She observed neighbors growing old together, friends laughing in cafes, and families celebrating milestones she had quietly ensured for others. Her heart ached not from resentment, but from a profound realization that the world she had nurtured was not the same as the world she lived in. While she had built homes, careers, and happiness for others, she had little left for herself. One winter evening, after helping her daughter Emily prepare for an art exhibition and checking in on Jonathan's career achievements over the phone, Margaret quietly went to bed. That night, she passed away peacefully, alone in her home. Her death was discovered by a neighbor who had grown concerned after noticing her mailbox overflowing with unopened letters and missed deliveries. The news traveled fast. Friends and family expressed shock and sorrow, yet there was a subtle undertone of guilt in many of their voices. How could someone so devoted to others have lived and died in isolation? Margaret's funeral was attended by her children, distant relatives, and a handful of neighbors who remembered her kindness in small, unremarkable ways: a casserole delivered during illness, a comforting word during a personal crisis, a child's scraped knee gently tended. The crowd was large enough to acknowledge her life, yet sparse enough to underline the quiet truth. Those she had raised, loved, and nurtured were now living lives that had moved beyond her. They were thriving because of her, yet in the end, she had no one truly present to witness her own life. In the weeks following her passing, her children sorted through her belongings. Among the stacks of letters and old photographs, they discovered journals filled with reflections, thoughts, and dreams never shared aloud. In her writing, Margaret revealed a world rich with hope, love, and regret. She spoke of her longing for companionship, for acknowledgement, for a life that was more than service to others. Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that shook each reader to the core. I gave everyone everything, and in doing so, I forgot to give myself even a moment of presence in my own life. The story of Margaret Ellis spread slowly through the town, becoming an unspoken lesson for all who knew her. It was a tale of devotion and sacrifice, but also a cautionary narrative about the cost of self-neglect. People began to ask themselves uncomfortable questions. How often had they postponed their own happiness for others? How many times had they assumed that those they loved would always be there, no matter how absent they had been in return? Margaret's life became a mirror, reflecting both the beauty and the peril of unconditional giving without boundaries. Her children, particularly Jonathan, who had always believed his mother's sacrifices were simply expressions of love, experienced a profound transformation. Emily, inspired by the depth of Margaret's hidden reflections, began incorporating themes of empathy and quiet heroism into her art. Daniel, realizing that he had taken for granted the very foundation upon which his success was built, reached out to his own family with a renewed sense of presence and attentiveness. Margaret's influence endured, paradoxically, even in her absence, teaching lessons that she had silently imparted throughout her life but never spoken aloud. Margaret Ellis' story resonates because it reflects a universal truth: those who devote themselves entirely to others can sometimes become invisible in their own lives. Her life was one of profound impact, yet deeply lonely, a reminder that love, while powerful, must be reciprocal. True devotion does not demand the sacrifice of selfhood, it flourishes when nurtured alongside personal fulfillment. Margaret's lesson is neither simple nor comforting, yet it is essential. In raising everyone, one must not forget to raise oneself. In the end, the legacy Margaret left was not measured solely by the accomplishments of her children or the gratitude of neighbors, but by the awareness she planted. Awareness that life is fleeting, that love without reciprocity can erode the soul, and that the quietest people often bear the heaviest burdens. Her life was a testament to human resilience, compassion, and the quiet tragedy of unacknowledged sacrifice. And though she died alone, Margaret's story continues to speak, teaching generations to come that true love requires balance. Nurturing others, yes, but never at the cost of losing oneself entirely.